300.
And see if you need it.
Okay, we'll call to order the regular city council meeting of January 23rd, 2023. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Here.
Salvia,
Here.
Albrecht,
Here.
Gould, Peterson,
Here.
Sage,
Here.
Trent.
Here.
You all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. The few, the proud, something like that. Thanks for coming tonight on a cold, wintry night. I do have one announcement before we start, and it's on our website, and it's pretty public. But our police chief has put in his notice that he is retiring after 15 years on our force and 41 years in law enforcement. So we will miss him greatly, and we will have some kind of formal going away event for him as it gets closer. But we are now actively have open search for a new candidate. I think we have an internal candidate who's going to apply, but it is open, and we're looking forward to the process, and it is a city manager hire with a city council confirmation. So that is the process. So we will miss Chief, but we are in the process of finding a replacement, and then we will have a nice event for him. So we are on to public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Brian, is there any?
Thank you. I do not see any at this time.
Okay. It's a very quiet evening tonight. Next, we have approval of the minutes, consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 9th, 2023.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Sage. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage.
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the consent agenda as a consideration of the 2023 no-haz agreement with Oakland County.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Albrecht. Mayor Pro Tem Salvia, comment.
Thank you, thank you. So I support this, and Finance Director answered a few questions. Recycling is really important, and I just really want the public to know that we also have an agreement with SACRA, SOCRRA, where residents can go, just get a permit, make an appointment. We have used both. There's quite a few more opportunities to recycle through SACRA, and I hope going forward we really continue to expand and encourage more residents to use SACRA as well.
Very good. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. There's no old business or table of items tonight. There's no public hearings, legislative deliberation. First is consideration of an ordinance to amend Article 21, Supplemental District Regulations, Section 2102, accessory buildings, second reading and adoption. Mr. City Manager or City Attorney, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Nothing new since the last time you considered it. At the last meeting, City Council moved it for first hearing and introduction. This is simply to change the maximum building height of an accessory building in a single-family residential district from 12 to 13 feet. And with clarification language that this is not to be meant to be used as a separate independent housekeeping establishment for occupancy. So nothing has changed since the City Council moved it for first reading, and the request is to move it for second reading and adoption.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Make a motion to move this ordinance amendment as presented by City Attorney Crott to second reading and adoption.
Motion by Councilmember Albrecht. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mayor Pro Tem Salvia. Discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Peterson,
No.
Sage,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you. On to reports and regular business is the report from the annual tree program. Is that Mr. City Manager or Mr. Albrecht?
We're going to tag team.
Okay.
Mark, do you want to start?
Mr. Albrecht, go ahead.
Yeah, what we, Nick and I talked about is this, I'd like to combine it with the tree committee meeting that we had, and then just cover both of them. So, I grab my notes here. So the tree committee met on January 19th, and this is our first meeting since last September, so it was a good meeting. And we had an agenda, and quite frankly, Nick had covered a lot of those items in his report that we had received as city council members prior to the meeting. So we really facilitated his report into the agenda, and let me just summarize the committee meeting, and it probably hits everything in Nick's report. We also welcomed DPW Representative Colin Pettit. He's not a member of the committee, but he added a lot of value being in the DPW, and that he's working with Jason, going out there and cutting some of the trees and, looking at where we're going to plant trees in the park and et cetera, et cetera. So he was very, very valuable. So we welcomed him, and at the end of the meeting, we thought it'd be nice to, as his schedule permits, that he can attend going forward. So we went over Nick's letter, and the first thing that jumps out is the tree fund. The tree fund is money that comes in as a result of permit fees that are paid for by residents to remove trees and violations for illegal removals during the year. Each year we report on how much money is in the tree fund, and quite frankly, the tree fund is meant to be spent. We take the money for the tree fund and it goes back into trees. So there's nothing else that's spent in that tree fund. So when you look at Nick's report and what we talked about, the balance is $42,248, but there's an asterisk next to that. When somebody has a violation, they have a couple options. One, they can plant an equal amount of trees to offset the violation in question, and they have a year to do that. Or two, they can say, you know what, I don't want to replant trees that I removed, and then they pay the fee. So really, $32,480 of that $42,248 we can't spend. It's, we have got to let the people who had the violations, there were a couple that make up the majority of that money, wait the year. If they decide to plant trees, which it's a win-win for us, the city, and for the environment, in that if they plant the trees to offset the cost, great. That's what we want to have happen. If they don't, we're going to do it for them, and we'll do it in different parts of the city as we've done in 2022, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We then talked about the tree bait program, and we started this program a couple years ago, and the first year we had 7 people. Last year we only had 4. And what the tree bait program is the city will partner with homeowners who want to plant a tree on their property, and we'll reimburse up to $250 of that cost. And what you're also getting is access to our nurseries and access to our city manager, AKA forester, to help decide what kind of tree you want to plant on your property and help do that. So we had 4 people take part of that, participate in that, excuse me. In the spring newsletter, we'll restate that. It's on the website. We talk about it as much as we can, not as much as Steve Sage's railroad book, but I try to keep up with him on that. So we will continue to do that. Sorry, Steve. So now, when we get to really the crux of Nick's report, which was, okay, how many trees went up, how many trees came down? And when you look at 2022 versus 2021, I'll give you numbers for both years so you have a comparison. We had 146 tree removal permits in 2022, 142 in 2021, so basically flat. That resulted in 412 trees being removed versus 353 trees in 2021. you might say, wow, that's a lot of trees coming down, and it is, and it was. And if you remember, we were hit by a couple storms. We've had DTE here a few times talking about that, and when Nick talked about the Dinosaur Hill cleanup and everything else like that. This city, being as old as it is, has a lot of older trees, and we lost trees. We lost significant branches off trees and cleanup and everything else like that. So that number, 412, was substantially higher than the 353 in 2021. So what did we do? We had set up, when we put in the tree bait program a few years ago, also a program called Rochester 100. Basically, it's just a tagline, or, let my marketing person say what it is. It's a goal for our, to plant at least 100 trees by the city. And during the year, I've reported from prior tree committee meetings that we had a couple major tree plantings, the 27 trees on Letica Road, which were 5 different species all intermingled and still look great. And then in the fall, the 23 sugar maples by the community garden. Last year on Arbor Day, we planted 2 trees in the park, and then the rest of them were city street trees that DPW and Nick and his team planted throughout the city. So that gave us 118 trees, again, so we exceeded the Rochester 100. We also had 2 trees from last year that were a violation that needed to be planted in Howlett Park. We finally did get the check from the violator, and we will plant those in the spring, correct, Nick?
Correct.
Yep, okay. So now we get to, that's the crux of Nick's report. Then we got into sort of really our agenda items, and there's a full agenda. Sorry, Mayor, it's going to go a little longer than normal on a tree committee, so, but.
Go for it.
Okay. So I mentioned the Sugar Maple Grove planting. We'd like to do a ribbon cutting there, much like we did when we did the community garden. We sort of planted it, and then fall and winter hit, so we'd like to do a nice little thing there, so we'll wait for the weather to cooperate. We didn't secure a ribbon cutting date. We'll do that at one of our next 2 meetings. Then we really talked about Arbor Day. Arbor Day is Friday, April 28th, 2023. We're blessed to have Melissa Weiss on our tree committee. Melissa is does a lot of philanthropy, marketing for the Leader Dogs for the Blind, and is a passionate tree lover like the rest of us on the committee. And so she's really taken the bull by the horns here, and we are going to be working with, if you go back, last year we planted in the park, the year before, and the year before we planted in the cemetery. So we said, let's go back in time, and the last time we planted at a school was 2014. So we are going to partner with McGregor Elementary School, and we're not just going to plant a tree, which we will do, and we'll have the fire department there and all the other kinds of things and giveaways for the kids. But Melissa's working with the school, and Nick, Melissa, and I met with the principal of McGregor Elementary this morning, had a great meeting. And we are going to work with the 3rd grade students. There will be approximately 75 children in the 3rd grade. It will be on Friday the 28th, and we are going to. They have a mascot there. I'll grab my notes. So, Howie. So they have Howie is the cougar of the school.
That's right.
So we're gonna work with Howie needs a friend. So, and Howie's friend is going to be with Howie, whatever a student comes up with, whatever animal or acorn or tree or whatever he or she comes up with for the mascot, Howie will get a friend, and they will present that to members of the tree committee we'll select the nicest ones. In Maryland, we will then turn it over to you to maybe have your marketing group turn Howie into a reality. So again, I'm not going to write a check we can't cash yet, but just we got you on the hook for that. So we will do that on that Friday. We'll have sort of recognition. Nick is working to get all kids in the 3rd grade little saplings that'll be packaged in little burlap bags to plant evergreens that they can take to their home. And some of you are probably bored with the story, but my daughter, when I moved here in '99, had a sapling from her school at Holy Family and planted it in my backyard, and it's now taller than my house. So those saplings do take off if you take care of them. So that's going very well. We then talked about, okay, what's the next Letica Drive or community garden for tree plantings in 2023? And this is where we ask the public, if you have some ideas for us, please let any of us know on city council or let Nick Banda know. But the one we are looking at is the Romeo Drive next to Howlett Park, that ribbon on the north side of the street across from the condos that borders the park. Not in the park, but there's a couple large trees there, but there's room for sort of another spattering of trees, much like we did with Letica Drive. So Nick and Colin are going to go out and spec it out and find out how many trees we can get in there. And in the spring, we will do that as our first major tree planting for 2023. I will be working with Nick to create a press release to recap what I've just given City Council. And then in the spring newsletter, we'll talk about plans for 2023. Then Melissa will create a separate press release just before the April 28th Arbor Day celebration, talking about, finding a friend for Howie and all the things that the students are involved with and things of that sort going forward. Couple more items. We are the mural city of Michigan, so one of the things we had talked about was creating a tree mural somewhere in the city. We talked about some locations back in September. One of those didn't come to fruition because the building put in some windows, but we are looking at potentially on the backside of the Kiwanis Pavilion in the park as a possible location. And when Doug gets back, we want to work with the City Beautiful Committee, as we've done very well in the past, to sort of get this in process. They've got a good connection with artists, and give an artist just a blank slate, which is the back of the building, and we're envisioning something with trees, maybe some nature, things of that sort to fit into the park going forward. So couple more items and then I'm done. There were 7 trees removed. If you're driving down Runyon East towards DeQuinder at the
lift station. Yep,
the lift station. They were removed because they had been diseased and damaged. So the tree committee talked to Nick and Colin, and in the spring, as we would do with homeowners, we want the city to replace those trees one for one, so that we have trees back in there. So right now it looks a little wonky because, with the stubs are like out of the ground, but that was done on purpose so that in the spring we can pull them out of the ground easier or grind them if necessary. So our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 23rd. And at that time, we'll put some meat on the bones to the Arbor Day celebration. That's it, Mayor.
Very good.
Nick, did I miss anything?
Sounds pretty complete to me. Mr. Bandit?
Yeah, I talked to Councilwoman or Mayor Pro Tem Savio a little bit about just letting the public know. Again, we'll put it in the spring newsletter what the rules are on trees. And when I got here 14 years ago, I came from a city that we wrote one of the original tree ordinances, and I remember in the conversations with Mr. Vitrano and the city council was like, that was important to us to get that established. So our ordinance has been in place for 14 years now. And it was written so that it's not a punitive ordinance. The whole idea was in the preamble, it talks about why trees are important to us for property value, for aesthetics, for the environment. And the fact that the way it was written, legally, we made sure that it would stand up in court. Because again, other communities, and Jeff, I know you know this for a fact, went on really heavy-handed in the beginning and had some massive lawsuits against them about, you can't tell me what I can't do on my own property. So in this community, every tree on private property or public property over 7 inches in diameter, and the way you measure that is called diameter at breast height, DBH, that you go 4.5 feet off the ground, you measure the circumference of the tree and create a diameter. So at 7 inches, that tree is protected. Anything under 7 inches is not regulated. A 7-inch tree is a pretty established tree. It's doing good for the neighborhood or good for the environment. It's integrally a part of our tree canopy. And that's our goal as a council, as a community. We established this a few years back and reiterated it, that we want over the years, we know 400 trees are going to come down because they die. We have silver maples in this town that my neighbor Ray's grandpa was the builder on Castell that built most of the west side of Rochester, the old homes in the 20s. He said they had a rule that every single property had to have 2 silver maples on it.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that. And so those trees are pushing 100 years old, all of them. So 100-year-old tree has a rough time going, especially if silver maples are brittle. So we're seeing some of those big trees have to come down. Those put massive holes in the canopy, right? So with our goal of trying to keep our canopy at neutral or increase if possible, that's where Rochester 100 came from. To the more we can plant, it might take 4 trees to get the canopy of one 100-year tree, but you keep getting at that and you can make progress. So that's what we've been doing. So again, over 7 inches, to be fair to the residents, we didn't say you can't touch anything. You get 3 trees of 7 inches or greater. That for $50, it's a permit fee to cover the administrative costs. We make no money on that. That's not the point. It goes back into the tree fund, and we even take that $50 and plant trees. So for every 5 of those trees, basically, we can plant a tree, permit fees. So we process the permit fee. I can do it in an hour or a day at the worst. And all we ask is people either take a picture or let me know where it's at. Happen to know most of the trees in the community. When you're around enough, you just know that. And Bruce Austin, that was here before, loved our city trees, and we have so many species in this town, more than other communities surrounding. So if something, God forbid, ever happens, like the ash borer or the chestnut blight or the elm disease, that we're covered because we have a lot of different species in this town. And Bruce is really good on the east side, especially, of varying the different varieties. Why on Letica we put 5 different species so that if a disease got into one of them, it's not going to wipe out all 27. So we're cognizant of that as we go on. You come in, pay your $50, issue a permit, you're good to go. If you wanted to take down more trees for some reason on your property than 3, then we calculate the value of those trees. It's a formula, straight up formula. Take the diameter, divide by 2.5, which is the diameter of the minimum size tree that you can plant. A deciduous tree has to be 2.5 inches in diameter, so we're not getting these little sticks. It's an established tree. It's usually about 5 to 7 years old. Or a conifer, if you wanted to plant a conifer, it's got to be 8 feet tall, when that's fine also. So white pines are measured by their stalks. Blue spruces are measured by their height, let's say, for instance. So you can plant those on your own property. If you want to take the excess of value and put it on your own property, or like Mark said, that we could put it in the tree fund, and then we plant them on public property. Again, goal of the tree committee, don't hoard the money, put it in the ground. We like to see that at 0 every year. And for instance, a lady and her husband, actually, it was her impetus that did this. On Carriage Way, there was 1 lot left on that private sub off of Parkdale, massive amount of wetlands. Back in the 80s, that we actually had wetland boundary survey. You could only put the footprint of a house right here. So last house in, they bought this house. It's a multi-million-dollar home. She loves trees, but the whole lot was trees, but most of them were box elders and elms that were dying. Did an inventory, submitted the fees, and to take the extra trees down to stabilize the banks, she had to come up with $30,800. Didn't even flinch, because she can spend some of that back on her own property, but there's not a lot of room to plant them. And of that $42,000, a lot of that's her money. And it's like, just plant them elsewhere in the city, because they knew that they couldn't help cutting down some of the trees, even though they weren't high-quality trees. She bought into our program, voluntarily thought, hey, let's just keep planting. So hopefully in a year from now, when she's done planting on her property, then we could take a look at that and plant even more trees. But again, straightforward ordinance. The violators are usually people that are coming in, and any city, before you do anything, you would think you'd come to the planning department or the building department and say, hey, what's going on? And I know you, as a realtor, you tell people you need to know the rules. Every city basically has a tree ordinance now. You need building permits, plumbing permits, right-of-way permits, all that stuff. So some people just, they're stubborn or whatever, and then we notify them, give them opportunity, plant them on your own property, or you can pay into the tree fund. So one year we had 1 violator, and that was just somebody new from out of town. One builder got excited, thought the owner pulled the permit, and didn't. And it gives me the latitude to work with these guys if they're not too adamant about saying, I didn't know the rules, shame on you for not telling me. We show them all of our publications, the newspaper articles, everything that's, it's right in front of you. You need to be cognizant of that. So it's helped immensely. We've planted thousands of trees in those 14 years from residents that I'm proud to say, if somebody comes in and says, I want to take down my 3, I'm going to plant 2 more. We give them credit in their BSNA file, say they didn't have to, but they planted 2 trees because they wanted to. The east side's struggling tremendously. Now, when Pulte put those homes in Saukwa, everybody wanted that instant gratification of landscaping by their front windows, their side windows, so you put evergreens up. And now they're up in the house, up in the gutters, destroying roofs, destroying siding. People are literally, they love the shade, they love the privacy, but they'll plant trees on their own, move them out properly, put the right species in, and I get to spend some time with the residents, guiding them through what's the right thing to do. So the condo associations in this town are awesome. They take it very serious. They have master landscape plans. They replace them 1 for 1 every time. So we've got a great relationship with our community. If somebody doesn't know, it's not because we didn't try to get the word out to them, and then we work with them in the case of a violation. So we don't want Jeff yelling at us for doing something that we're going to get in trouble for. So it's been a great ride, and I suspect it will keep going on. And now the tree committee is really becoming proactive, reaching out to the schools, getting Arbor Day, giving free trees away, things like that. So it's been a good run, and I anticipate it's going to keep going.
Very good. Anything? Okay. All right, next is a receipt of the check register report. Any questions on the check register? Okay. Next, a report from various boards and commissions. First is a report from the OPC. Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Yes, okay, so the OPC board met January 5th, and first order of business was to re-elect the slate of directors, so there were no changes. Rochester is well represented with resident Al Fisk as the secretary on the board, so that's great. We spent most of our time talking about transportation. With the passage of the transportation millage, the OPC has been working with Oakland County probably since mid last year on what that could look like. They have submitted a budget, actually multiple budgets. One budget is to continue exactly the services that have been provided through OPC. The second is a significant expansion, adding a mobility manager, adding 3 more part-time drivers, adding 3 full-time drivers, adding 3 electric vehicle buses, increasing the radius, going to some different locations. So really looking to expand transportation services for our seniors through the OPC. Both of those budgets have gone to the Oakland County Commissioners. They, along with agreements with the OPC, need to be approved. So they're meeting later this month. So possibly in February, the OPC will see what those agreements look like. But really looking forward to increased transportation for our seniors delivered through the tax dollars that are being levied through the transportation millage. So lots of discussion on transportation in addition to all the amazing things that continue to go on at the OPC. They had a great grandkids swim in December, a new event. Great events coming up this year. They were also recognized for the renovation of the OPC cardio and weight room. So they received a facility design for that. If you haven't checked it out, you may want to. So great things happening at the OPC.
Marilyn Trent? Councilmember Trent?
Just to say, I'm glad to hear that they hopefully will be an expansion of the transportation for seniors, as my mother and stepdad are partaking in that for 4 or 5 years now. And it is, the wait is long. It's a much-needed service, and I'm excited that we are looking at expanding it, hopefully.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, thank you. So I have a question. DTE, I guess for administration, DTE has sent out to everyone the change in the peak hour times of how they're going to charge. So how are we going to be mindful of that? Because it's from 3 to 7 is the peak, that you are going to be charged more, right? So when it comes to all these electrical vehicles and everything, how are we going to do that to where, I mean, we don't overspend on that?
Yeah, I can't speak for OPC, but you mean from the city side, right? So we just entered into a contract to get our We have 2.5 EV charging stations, 2 at City Hall and 1 in the DPW yard. Went through a company that's going to front the money for all of them to go to 4, and they can program them around that. So they'll go off-peak to set them up to be used. And then when we bill back, it would be based on the rate that we're getting at that hourly period. So this company's pretty sharp, and they're ahead of that even, so anticipating it. So we're going to take advantage of that.
So even the ones that are throughout town, those will all be done the same way?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, we're lucky because the new ones you can program from a computer versus one size fits all, plug it in, and whatever you pay, you pay. So these are all, we can change whatever we want to do, the rates, when we have them on, let people know at this hour, it costs you more because you're using our electricity, and they pay for it through an app. Right, we don't even have to deal with it, it's just programming in the new meters, so
Oh,
it's pretty
that's
cool.
good to know, so they will be charged if they're, okay, all right. I just didn't want us to.
Yep,
be
subsidized.
putting
Yep,
them-
gotcha.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councilmember Sage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So where are the OPC buses, the smart buses domiciled?
Currently on the OPC property.
Okay, so have they done anything to, say they get the award from Oakland County to buy 3 EV buses? There's a lot, it's not like you just plug it into the wall.
Right.
So there's a lot of work that can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to get the charging infrastructure in place. So are they aware of that?
I think they're becoming aware. I mean, that is part of the discussion is, where would these buses be held? What types of facility improvements are needed? There's even discussion on maybe it's another location. Maybe it's not at the OPC. Maybe there's a more central location.
So-
You know,
So this is what I do for a living now. So if anybody wants, I'd be glad to talk to somebody at the OPC.
Got it.
Councilmember Albrecht?
To follow up on Councilmember Peterson's statement in terms of electrical vehicles, which is a good one. I have a charging station in my garage when I used to have an electric vehicle, and again, I don't know if it's changed, so this was a while back, but DTE, we plugged that in and it charged like from midnight to 4 a.m., and it was a different rate than my house charging rate. So it was a reduced rate. It was at hours when we're sleeping, so you didn't need to worry about it. So that's one of the, if you have an electric vehicle and you're just going, less than 100 miles a day, you can just charge at night. So I'm thinking that would be something the city could do, and I'm sure there's smarter minds than me that would figure that out when to program them, as you said, Nick, with that consultant.
No, I just think, I'm sorry, I just see that it is a concern that we don't know. And also, the other concern that I learned of, which, considering the OPC is going to have older people on them and transporting them, if they're in an accident, that can become a huge hazard with those batteries. So I don't know what kind of precautions that's going to be needed as well.
It's probably for the fire departments to
Well,
get that.
yeah, federally though, through the fire department, that's where I learned that is something that there's not a lot they can do, so.
You're right. So I'm sure they'll take all that stuff in. I know Oakland County's got a pretty high-level group that are looking at this and trying to figure the whole thing out. It's not a simple thing, but it's extremely complicated. Just the grid, and Steve's living it every day, our Councilman Sage is living it every day, and we've got to be prepared. And then there's things that come with it, like fires. You just stay away.
Well, yeah, the accidents and all that, but you're going to have people on the buses, that's.
Okay, thank you. Next is a report from the Rochester Recreation Authority, Councilmember Albrecht.
This will be a shorter report. We met on January 11th, and we covered 4 things. One of them was a follow-up item. Several meetings ago, one of our residents, I think it was Pat Kane, had asked how much the roof was going to cost, and at that time, I didn't have the final bills. They did come in, so, and they're reflected in our approval of the bills paid in the agenda that you see. We budgeted $709,210 for the roof. The roof with all contingencies and credits and additional charges came in at $702,135 for a savings of, or not really savings, it was under budget of $7,074. So, again, that roof was well long overdue. The people in the dance studios, there were buckets, during rainstorms and everything else, so it's sealed very tight now. So I just wanted to follow up on that, and that was one of the first items we talked about. Like the OPC, we also reelected our officers, and the officers are, John Mink was reelected as chair. I'm going to stay on as vice chair, and Teresa Mangioli, who is a Rochester Hills City Council member, will continue on as secretary. As I do every monthly meeting, the year-end numbers for registrations were up 1,444 over 2021. We had 9,974 registrations versus 8,530 versus 2021. And versus 2020, it just blew it out of the water. Now, we are not at the 2019 numbers, nor will we be. We took a big hit with the dance program. That year, when we had the full dance program, was 11,297. So we're still 1,300 below 2019, but we're chugging along and getting back, and we've got a good dance leader there and rebuilding that. And then revenue, our revenue for the year came in $163,000 over budget. It'll take a couple months for the audit and to get it reconciled, and our executive recreation director, Dave, will come here, and we anticipate putting money back into the reserve fund as we do, or capital fund as we do every year. That's it, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Next is a report from the Downtown Development Authority. Councilmember Trent.
Yeah, that's me. So our first regular meeting was last Wednesday on January 18th, and we got a donation, or they got a donation from the Italian Happening event, also known as the Italian Car Event, which was on July 23rd, and there was a donation to the DDA for $3,250, and for the Paint Creek Center for the Arts, we'll get a matching one. So thank them very much. The snowmen were so popular, and as we know, the Magical Mural Tour has been popular as well. So there was discussion of wanting to add more art into the downtown, whether it's pop-up or permanent, as in murals and sculptures. They have a really long, involved visioning statements, so they want to revisit that as well. Then they were pleased to see the restriction of general office use to the second floor, so that Main Street is going to be retail now.
Well, it
Still
has to go through the process.
Oh, oops, sorry.
Right.
It's not- yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just stop me when I'm
Yeah.
talking out of school here.
Can I just pop
Yes.
in here? So I know this is under discussion, so I don't know, administration, can council get a draft of what is being discussed when we're to that point? I think we should all be kind of thinking about it and talking to people about this.
Yeah, I do too, since I'm getting a little confused. I keep thinking I thought it was.
But it has to go to the planning commission, and then it has to come to the city council.
Well, they are pleased to hear that.
Right.
All right, thank you. So, every year they work on getting a Main Street annual accreditation. So they have a meeting every year, with the powers that be. I think that's Oakland County. Is that
Yeah.
Oakland County? Yeah. Accreditation, yeah. And that will be on February 2nd at the Collaboration Studio. The DDA board members were invited to join between 9 and noon. Okay, so there was a lot of discussion about the upcoming goals and objective meeting, which will be on January 30th, 6 to 8 at City Hall. And they discussed there will be a discussion of upcoming projects, and they were talking about what those could be and getting us prepped for that. Any questions?
Very good,
Oh, no, no, I was just going to ask who all is going to attend the goals and objectives meeting?
I think it's the DDA board, but I think it's an open meeting.
It's open.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I think you've been at them before, haven't you?
Well, I was just sitting on the DDA at that time.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
That's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
because we can't all go,
Correct.
so.
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that through Christy and Jenna, for Dancing in the Street, which is July 14th, They've got Your Generation Band coming,
Yeah.
so it's moving up in the world. So Jenna, I guess, did the negotiations and worked out well. So that'll be exciting. Next, on to receipt a report from the City Beautiful Commission. Doug Gould is gone, but Councilmember Trent is going to fill in.
Yes, and I'm reading from his notes, okay, just making that clear. So, the City Beautiful Commission discussed working with the parks to have bluebird boxes and wood duck houses in Howlett Park, which is a prairie restoration, which is a perfect place for those, and they're a lot cheaper than properties that we all live in downtown Rochester and around. Very cheap. And park benches, they are becoming limited as space is filling up with our lovely park benches, even at $2,000 each. Mr. Banda, who do they talk to?
That's me.
Who does someone, if I would want a park bench, what would I do?
Yes, so online, we just modified Megan and Holly and I today are modifying the flyer because, as Councilwoman Trent pointed out, I know it's a big park, and you think, oh, you could put them everywhere. We're literally benched out pretty much. So Colin and I are going to ride a gator with Carl this winter, maybe find a couple spots along the river we can put them and spread them out, maybe around the new All Abilities park in the exterior, one more by the tennis courts, and then we're really pushing the Sugar Maple Grove and Mount Avon Cemetery. Leanne doesn't like that, but we're just a little bit here. So we're talking about, it's $2,000 to put the bench up, and again, because we have events in the park, it's great, people use them all, and Colin's really good about moving around to where they're used. And at cemetery, it's working out really great. We don't put a cement pad in the cemetery. We're trying to keep that natural. We can get them under the trees. He elevates the tree, puts them underneath there, and there's a lot of emotional attachment to these benches. I get the stories, and there are two people that literally live on the periphery of Mount Avon because their one son, one daughter was unfortunately passed away, and they want to live near where their children are. It's heartbreaking, some of these stories, and so we're doing our best to spread it out throughout the community. We still send them to the DDA because there's a couple more spots the DDA could put benches. Library, everybody wants to be by library. There's no more room there either. You just, at some point, you run out of time. But it's a great program, and we reinvest it. And the money, we make a little bit of money on the $2,000, and then we put that back into the butterfly garden, things like that. It's all, we don't stash that money. It's all put back into the park. So it's worked out really well.
Councilmember Albrecht?
This might be a question for Councilmember Sage and for Nick Manda, but, you know, I'm on the Paint Creek Trail all the time from the Butterfly Garden all the way up past Tinkin, up to Dutton and Silver Bell, and I know our portion is just really up till just before Tinkin. Who do you go to in terms of if you want to put benches on that area? Because all you have on our trail is that wood swing, and there's no benches along the side.
So the police department gathered their $2,000 and bought a bench in honor of a doctor that they knew that walked that every day, and we put one, we snuck one, and Colin cut out a little elbow. If you go up the trail from the park to go right towards La Pumas, it's tucked back in the woods there. So that's the only one that there's a spot for. But I think as you go further north, we go to Melissa Ford, right, and see if they usually send them to me, but there's not a lot of room to put them.
There's not. We have very limited space now on the trail. You would have to submit a request to the trail manager.
As I get older, I need to rest a little bit more, so, thank you.
And as you get older, you have more money to, hopefully you have more. Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. So along the river by Royal Park and through there, who owns that? Can we put any along there?
So that's a great question. So that is owned by now the new owners of the hotel. They let us use that, but our connection's on the other side, so they control that. They put some benches and trees, but they've always said that's our land. That was Rewald's. And actually, Bev Rewald purchased 2 benches for Roy before they turned over the property. And if you go on the bridge, the bridge with the locks on it and things, there's 2 benches there now that just say, in memory of Roy Rewald, and she wanted one on each end for people to sit at. So as you come off the trail, even on their property, there's 2 there. So we're pretty good at finding places, but that section is the hotels.
Okay, I thought it was,
Yeah.
but wanted to make sure.
And is that, you're talking about where they all put their Adirondack chairs and,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
okay.
no, I was,
down the other
no,
way.
I'm talking about where you cross over at
Yeah.
Second, that whole section there.
Okay.
section is?
Yeah. So I have one more question. So it was brought up, some residents had talked about expanding and adding more trees in the park to the side to where we could buffer more of where all those houses are on that side. You know, sporadic some trees through there because it's really wide open and not like scattered all over, but more to put like a buffer. People.
By Albertson, up that way, or no?
No, just right here in the park.
Oh.
Right over there. in
Gotcha,
That
all right.
open area. So I
Yep.
thought if you could put some trees back in through there, you could add some benches because a lot of people do go on that side.
So, good point. So today, literally today, we got our chief, let's see, who got that? Me and, I can't remember who else. Somebody wrote a very detailed, it was an engineer, I think. He went through a whole process of, in the park, backing up to the homes on Ludlow,
Yeah.
and said, I get they want to see the park, but maybe we don't want to see their backyards. So I hadn't thought of that, but that is something we could take to the tree committee, and maybe we do put a buffer back there, because it's our land, and if we want to, I get they want to see where they're, they can see it from the second story, but on the
Right.
first floor to create, so I think that's a pretty good idea, and then you could plop some benches in there.
No, and I thought it was, that's a huge area.
Yeah, it is
Very-
big.
it's-
Yeah.
You could be more utilized
Yeah,
on
got
that
it.
side.
Yep,
Ann, are you talking about where the big homes are, that area?
yes.
Yeah, just that whole
Okay,
entire
Backyards, so
stretch.
that, yeah, that would be
I'll make a
something to
note of
look
that.
at.
Wilcox, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, I have a couple of other things. More work is being planned for the skating shelter, and then it says fireplace. I didn't write these notes, and I don't remember that conversation.
I can help you. So, the Rewalds, again, Bev, in honor of Roy. Roy broke his ankle skating on the park back in the 90s on the pond. And when he passed away, she wanted to do something to remember that. So she donated like $40,000 literally, and we really upgraded the skating shelter. Ra uses it extensively in the summer, and it kind of got quiet in the winter. And one year we had Ra tried to sell cocoa out of there, and we had like one day of the pond being frozen, unfortunately, so it wasn't worth their effort. So Marcy, of our staff, took it upon herself and said, well, it's not to make the money off, but let people use it. And so there's a fireplace that we had redone, but it's a gas fireplace, and I think it's $3,000 we have to spend to get it working properly, or we're gonna put an electric insert into it. It can't burn wood, a little bit, not a good idea, not being able to control it. So we're now renting that out in the winter for small parties. In the summer, we'll go back to when Ra-Ra's not using it, go to the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the whoever, and say, you can rent it for a weekend and sell stuff out of there if you'd like to. So we're gonna make that more productive and usable, because it's a great little spot. It's got a bathroom inside. Jason went over it, and we have to, there's a pump station out there, and he's making sure it's appropriate. We need to redo the floor in the bathroom, things like that, but nothing's unsafe. It's just a little tired, so we're slowly making it more usable. And in the winter, we want to use it, so I think that'd be fun. So that was the point there.
There was discussion for the 2023 budget discussion, and there was a lot of discussion about the Sugar Maple Garden and adding some pocket parks along there.
Yeah, so I challenged, so Marcy likes getting stuff done quick. She's like, let's find a kit and we'll go build a shelter in the middle of the Sugar Maple Grove, because we left a 20 by 20 foot area. And Bob Bloomendale talked, he's like, hold on, why don't we do it right and put like cedar shakes and make it pretty, and then somebody could donate a bench underneath it. And then the City Beautiful's like, I said, why don't you make that your project? We could do a community build. Remember we went and painted the Kiwanis shelter and all that?
Yeah.
So I'll bet you this spring we have a shelter put in there with the City Beautiful folks, and I think that'd be a lot of fun, and kind of complete that area. Then we could start putting the little elbows of butterfly gardens, et cetera, as you walk down the path there. So,
Yep.
yeah, they took it on, so.
Good memory. Great. So when we started talking about pavilions, we started talking about consistency of a look that's a system, that once you start one look, then you consistently work through different areas if you're going to make more or build more park picnic pavilions. People like shaded areas. They don't like these big sunny open areas, but they do like to have those when they're eating. So we had a discussion at the South about the South Bridge Park
to add a pavilion there, and there's been a lot of talk about that, and there's been other types of ideas presented, and one of them was with the Clinton River Watershed Council. There was a platform for entertainment. They were talking about finish out the hill with native plants, and so that was one of the discussions. Good Neighbor Award Program is continuing. Apparently, there are people who have good neighbors in Rochester. We were getting low for a little bit. And I think it's because we don't advertise it enough, and then some neighbors are really shy. They don't want, we found out they would be chosen, and then they didn't want the recognition. They were just good neighbors. And we also discussed having a QR code system that would be at different areas where we want to do improvements, and then we could let people know how they could contribute for the project. I know that's a bigger discussion about how do you make donations and what funds do you make them to. Then the Rochester Pollinators, the last report was that on last Saturday, the winter sowing workshop went really well with native plant winter sowing workshop, making milk jug greenhouses, and all the funds go to Dinosaur Hill, but it was sold out. So the next opportunity is this Saturday, January 28th. You can do it with your kids and adults, for both kids and adults, and we added 7 more spaces. And the Rochester Pollinators was creating subcommittees to help Dinosaur Hill with a couple of their gardens that are at the location to help refurbish them, and then they will take them over. We're still the pollinators are also talking about working and going to work with continue to remove invasives in the park, and the Rochester Hills Public Library and Cemetery Maintenance will continue with their volunteers, and then the list goes on, so I'll stop.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I guess for administration, so back in the days, Good Neighbor was started for us to recognize the people who really beautified their properties and the businesses as well. Are we going to bring that back?
So you're right. So we did that one year. It was a massive amount of work to cover every stitch of the city. So I think that became more from that into more of a recognize people for their efforts. And so the answer is no, they're not going to do that. It was just so much work to go out, and I remember taking them on a bus. I think we went out and looked at every single property that was nominated. So it was, at this point, it wasn't cost effective to do so. They're not going to do the physical one. They're just going to stick with the more social part of it.
Good to know.
Okay, thank you. Next is a report from the Pink Creek Trailway Commission. Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of updates here. First being Bridge 31.7 and all the grant applications that we have in process right now. So we'll start with the DNR Sparks grant, which is up to $1 million award. That application has been submitted, and the award will be announced the week of January 30th. So fingers crossed there. The DNR Fisheries Habitat Grant, minimum of $25,000, up to the cost of the project if it's under 1.5, which is roughly what the bridge is going to cost. They denied us for 3 reasons. They feel that it's better suited as a recreation or infrastructure grant. They deemed the fish passage benefits minor, which I don't understand that, since all the wood collects under that bridge and obviously denies passage.
Can I back you on that? So I helped Melissa write that grant because as a Trout Unlimited guy, every year we have to go there with 40 people to dig out the wood, which stops the fish passage in the spring when the trout need to go up and lay their eggs. So that was bogus. I called DEQ. It's like, check that box off, because they have pilings in there that automatically hold the wood. This would be a clear span bridge. It should have met every single, it was $20,000, but it was still $20,000. And
Right.
They blew us off way too quick, I thought.
Well, they added insult to that by telling us they didn't think the project was necessarily funded or secured. That's fair, I guess. The Community Foundation grant, a minimum of $50,000 up to $400,000 maximum. It's a 1-to-1 match requirement, though, for the city. The application deadline there is due March of this year. The DNR Natural Resources Trust Fund, minimum of $15,000 to a maximum of $300,000 25% match requirement, application deadline April of this year. The DOT Transportation Alternatives Program, minimum of $200,000 without a defined maximum. It's a minimum 20% match requirement from the applicant, and no other grant fund sources could be used to meet that match requirement. Applications due in February, and that award would be in July. So we have a opportunity there. And finally, the DNR Land and Conservation Fund, minimum 30 with a maximum of 500,000, 50% match requirement. That application's due in April. So we have a lot of opportunities here, and we may know something by summer with regards.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Melissa talked to Alec today.
Okay.
And she was a little, like, is the city ready to come up with like 200,000? Because even at 1.5 million, we think our portion on any of these grants would have to about 200,000. The answer is, it's always been on our radar, but we have not put a budget item. So during our budget process, we need to talk about, we're going to take it to the infrastructure committee and come up with recommendations, because we should be ready if one of these grants hits. We're going to have to come up with $200,000, and not easy to do, right? So we let her know, we'll bring it up to the council and see if we can get a commitment that if in fact we're successful in there, we need the plan, because it's a great project. So I told Alec, just we're on it, so we'll see what we can do.
I think we would have a good discussion during the budget process, because 200,000 is a lot less than 1.5 million.
Yes.
That we would have the responsibility to pay.
All set?
I have one more, but.
Okay, go ahead.
The Dillman and Upton project, the fence project. So we received that, the trail received that site plan, if you will. So they've requested new drawings for a couple reasons. The license agreement that they have with Dillman and Upton only allows a 10-foot fence, whereas some of these are 12 and higher. The other problem came up with the drawings they submitted and the fuel shed that's on the trail property. So obviously, the license agreement does not allow for any flammable source on the trail. So we're going to actually have to go back to the survey to determine if the fuel shed is truly on trail property. If it is, they have to ask Dillman and Upton to move it.
I just heard about that today, Councilman. Literally, somebody sent me an email about it, and again, I don't think Dylan knew it. That's been there forever. So,
Right.
My experience with Mans, the new folks, have been wonderful, and they're like really wanting to clean it up. They're embarrassed how it looks, and I would say that they fully expect to cooperate whatever the Trail Commission wants to make it better.
Okay.
So I don't think we'll have any pushback.
Great. And the only other request that they've always asked for, if Mans would consider putting more trees in
Along-
that area
yep,
on the
absolutely.
fence line. That's it.
Councilmember Peterson?
And just one, so if we can reach out to our legislators, because the DNR trust fund has so much money in it, it is absurd.
It is.
Okay? They're holding on to money that, and money keeps going into it every year with the state, but they're not using it. And they are so, just to hear those numbers, it's like you could easily give the whole entire state a whole bunch of money to do all kinds of projects.
Agreed.
Very good. Councilmember Sage, we have great confidence you're going to bring one of those home for us.
Yes, we do,
Yes, sir.
especially the
Four of
trout.
them.
Go tell them about those trout.
Yeah.
They're getting stuck.
Tell them about the wood and the fish and stuff.
I will.
All right,
care
and
about those
we've
things.
done the tree committee, so on to public comment. Is there further public comment? Brian?
I've not seen any, thank you.
Okay, any, no? Can you come up, introduce yourself, Mr. Pat, and give us your new address?
You gotta come to the podium.
Mike.
This is my first one. I feel like Chief Brody and Jaws here, but I'm not going to talk about the shark problem.
Good.
A new resident in Rochester as of the last 3 weeks. I bought a condo a couple months ago, but I just transitioned over after I retired. And I didn't plan to say anything, but I'm going to pass some information on to my niece. Is this the phone number here that she would call if she's interested in doing a bench with the City Beautiful Commission?
Yeah, they'd call me.
Call, this number? Okay, great. that's it. She's interested in doing a bench for my dad, which is her grandfather, so,
Welcome to Rochester.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
welcome.
Mr. City Manager.
So I'm assuming, Mayor, that somebody's going to talk about fire and ice, because I saw almost everybody there, so I won't. But I just want to congratulate the county, thank Dave Vanderveen, who I just found out when he retired, he had put in 55 years with Oakland County.
Oh, my God.
My dad did 51 in Dearborn. I thought he had the record. 55 is a long time. Dave was great. He still got the energy of a young man up there on both nights. So, and thank you to the county for what they did, and thank you to our DPW, police, fire, CERT team. You guys can explain all the things that went on, but it was a good weekend in town. That's all I've got.
Madam Clerk?
Passed around, I just have one thing. Marcy asked that I pass around the hard copy of the updated vision and SWOT analysis items from the Saturday meeting. She also emailed this to you this afternoon, so you can get both hard copy and an email. And that's all we have tonight.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney?
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Salvia?
I'll chime in on fire and ice. You know, you can never control the weather, so I think we navigated a good mix of not too cold, a little bit of snow. And I noticed in town both nights, it was packed during the day. On Saturday, it was packed. People were eating, walking. It was great to see.
Councilmember Sage?
Just one item. I'd like to humbly request a excused absence for the January 9th due to illness.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson, support by Councilmember Albrecht. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen?
Yes.
Salvia?
Yes.
Albrecht?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Sage?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht.
I'll jump on the fire and ice bandwagon, since I was a little critical of Dave Coulter a few meetings ago, and the support of fire and ice. I did get to talk to him on Friday night and personally thanked him and his team for really bringing fire and ice back to Rochester and being out there in force. And again, for all the reasons Nick and everybody up here has said, it was a great event for the city. And I enjoyed it, as I always do, and I always get freaked out at that last firework when the smoke comes up thinking something went wrong, but the fire chief told me that's part of the show, so.
Every year.
Then Scamp, Rah Scamp, which is our group that works with youth that have challenges for our summer camp, is having their bowling fundraiser Saturday, February 4th at North Avon Lanes. It's we do that every year. It starts at 8:30, $30, gets you 3 games, pizza, pop, and there are prizes throughout the night. So I hope some of the public can come support these kids' chance to get to go to summer camps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Trent.
Nothing?
Councilmember Peterson.
Two things. Scamp is an awesome event, so I'm glad they're able to do that for them. Question for administration. So, not to bring up Solaronics, but I have to. So, with Solaronics, any project over there, okay? My question for administration is to find out what type of criticalness is it that any huge building like that would be by DPW with all the fueling stations and everything. In the event there was something that happened, so how would we be able to, how, is it too close, too far? Because it's kind of not very far from when that complex would be.
Yeah, so the only thing that would be, that's a fair question. So the only thing that would affect anything residential, let's say, or anything at Solaronics would be the fuel station, and that's got automatic shutoffs on it. So that's the highest tech above ground storage that are all shut off, so there would be no conflict between the two uses. On the reverse, we make sure anybody that's been interested in Solaronics knows you're going to hear beep, beep, beep before and after. That's just we're not going to stop our operations, whoever builds there. But yeah, as far as safety, we're good.
Okay, good.
That's fair. That's a good question.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say, with Fire and Ice, I thought it was a great event. The county really did a good job. Dave Coulter committed, I think there's a few of us there, he committed to coming back next year. They seemed to, and the county commissioners, the head of the park committee, was very positive about it. So it was good, and really, I thought Saturday night, it was like Lanyap downtown. It was that crowded, and really, I want to say the whole holiday season, when the lights have been up, I don't know if it's just been the weather has been so nice, but it is full of people all the time, and so I don't know if it's just COVID being over or stuff, but people are really out, so our downtown, I believe, has had a great holiday
And Mayor,
season.
you've heard that Christie's made reports and that the businesses have told the staff, this is their best year in a decade. And this was a huge night for them this weekend. They needed that in January, and they got it. Saturday night, you're right, it was like lining up. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So this was one of the first years where we've actually kept the lights on past New Year's Day.
Well, so, it's funny, so 3 years, just before, the first year before the shutdown in 19, I remember Dave Vanderveen said, Brooks, he always had some place in his heart for Christie, and he's like, get Christie to leave the lights on no matter what. But we only did it on the weekends, so we would go weekend, done. This year, because we had no damage on the lights, they were able to keep them on during the week, and people loved it. And we don't want to overburden the Christmas thing, but people absolutely went all the way through. They start coming down today. They don't mess around when they're down. I bet you half a block's down already. So they're going to get them while they're in good shape. So.
Good.
Councilmember Trent?
Just to pile on, but yes, I have heard from a lot of the merchants that this was the best.
Stellar year.
For in sales, I mean, and that really means a lot.
Yeah.
That's where the.
Yeah, and the mayor brought
That's
up
what they're
at
trying
the
to.
pre-goals
that's
and
their goal.
objectives for them, that he wanted them to look at, we used to go farther north. It's a dollar figure, but who's to say people wouldn't want to participate? That's how we got them back on naps.
Yeah.
Remember Dan, the Don Ferry at Par, he used to get a naps donut every morning. And when we told him that we couldn't put the lights on the donuts anymore, he literally wrote a check for $10,000 from Par so that they could keep the lights on that roof there for 10 years. And we're in year 7, I think. So you never know. I mean, it went all the way up to Romeo at one point.
Right.
Right?
And
Yeah.
we've always talked about university.
University going down, yeah.
Can you coming into the city?
Yeah, yep, so it's something to look at, so.
I think that's something we're gonna at least talk about in goals and objectives, on Monday.
Well, and more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it was more than lights. It was some other type of like,
Other kind of
like
things.
London was mentioned in it. It wasn't London in the United States. It was London over the
Was
pond.
it London, Ontario? Councilmember Peterson?
Yeah, so one of the other communities I had been in during the whole holiday season, they actually had, it's up north, they actually had all the street lights, all the street poles lit, which was really pretty driving through with that, so.
And as I keep saying, how does Hallmark not come to Rochester?
They're coming.
They're coming.
They're
I
coming.
see it.
They're coming.
I agree.
So, all right, well, thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, or maybe City Manager, you know,